There's power in a drum beat on a hill above the sea. Power in the voice of a supporter. But it all amounts to nothing. Together we don't sing. There's power when we're not OIC. Any day, go forever. Old Town, Stingery. Valley and mountain, chaparral to the sea. And the colors of our rainbow, sunset, orange, Tory, green. There's power when we're not OIC. SC loyal forever. Someday in North County. Desert to islands, get back on you and me. All our voices strong together as we cheer on our team. Welcome to the Loyal Locals podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Dyer. Another week with no game and, well, no team. If you're lucky or you watch Offer Up, you will see the garage sale that is our former club, San Diego Loyal, selling everything from desks to various Loyal merch, pop-up tents, chairs. It's pretty sad, but also your opportunity to own a piece of the club as they kind of get ready to vacate their offices and headquarters. I know lots of people in Discord have already taken advantage of that, so I would encourage you, if you're so inclined, they're posting it on Offer Up. On the podcast tonight, we have actually really good stuff lined up for everyone, so I hope you are joining us live. If not, of course, you can download on your favorite podcast app. We're going to go over the results of the second member survey. Our producer, John Cross, who is joining me tonight, of course, has put together some helpful charts and graphs to help us with this survey. Then at 9 o'clock, we are going to have a lounge. I'm very excited about journalist and researcher James Stout will join us. James has a PhD in European history, and he knows a lot about the history of anti-fascism in soccer supporter groups. So we're very excited to have James on tonight to talk a little bit about the role soccer supporters have played in the greater society. So that's all coming up. John, I know I said a lot at the top of the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I think I jumped the gun on my cue on coming in. I heard my name, so I brought
myself
up.
I cued you, and then I just kept talking. So that was me, really.
I'm excited about going over our results for the second survey because it was a and actually we'll get into that in a couple of minutes, but just thankful for everybody who took the time because it was a big survey and it was long. But this is a very unique time for us, and we had more than 100 responses. So
it was the essay questions awesome. That got me, John. The essay questions, like always. Actually, I was one of those weirdos that was like, yes, essay question.
You're ready for that.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
okay. So we did have a member event last week. I know you wanted to hit on that a little bit. On Thursday, we went to AleSmith, and we're joined by several members of the front office, as well as a handful of players who came out, hung out, and just kind of talked a little bit with whoever was hanging around. And I know, John, you were there.
I was there, one of my few outings anymore. But yes, it was good to be out there. I hung out on the, as most people saw, out on the balcony a little bit just to stay in the fresh air. And it was good to see everyone. It was quite crowded. There were quite a lot of people there. There were several images floating around, but I do have one of several of the players who showed up. I don't remember off the top of my head if this is everyone. Of course, pictured there in the center with Lydia. But I think that was most everyone. Do you remember, Andrew, if am I missing anyone who showed up from as a player at least?
I think that's everybody that showed up. If anybody else came through, they weren't there for very long, but I think that's everybody.
But it was good. I had a good time talking and catching up with people. Got to talk with some of the players. Talked with what was it? Colin Martin, I guess, and Morgan Hackworth, mostly out on the deck a little bit as they were leaving, just going in. They stopped and chatted. It was good conversation, and then got to talk with a lot of other people. It was nice. It's hard because I kept in my mind just running through like we keep saying it was the final game and it was the final everything, and this was kind of like our final function as a supporter group for the SD Loyal. So that was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I took advantage of that to do a little bit of lobbying for my preference that I expressed in the poll, but I went ahead and went around and grabbed everybody by the ear, several people at least, and said, "Oh, do you want this to end? Look at all of us. Do you really want this to be the last time?" And then kind of pushed my own agenda, which I'll probably do on this show again tonight whenever the time comes. But so we had that member event. There was also a lot of locals present at the Wave playoff match on
Yes.
Sunday. Did you make it out to the Wave?
I did not make it out to the Wave match. Watched it on television, but did not make it out to the actual stands.
So you watched it on TV.
Yes.
What did you think the crowd sounded like?
Well, I think it's because I on television, I don't think you could hear very much. At different times, you could hear things, but I felt the broadcast in general was not picking up the crowd ambiance, any of the noise at all anyway. So it was really hard to get a feeling on what the noise was actually like in the stadium because it felt like all the external noise outside of the broadcast. And I was watching a Spanish language feed that, especially in the beginning, just had it was just the direct feed from the stadium, no commentary. I was loving it. I was like, this is perfect. I'd rather watch it with no announcers anyway. And there I felt like there was a bit more noise. You could hear what was going on, but as soon as the announcers came on, it seemed like they changed their settings and all you could hear were the announcers. And it really, as a fan watching from home, it was there's the play on the field, and I know people had some comments about that, but it did not feel like a playoff match. Just felt very sterile watching it on television. And it wasn't that people weren't loud it's just that you really couldn't hear much, at least on the broadcast I was watching, the way, especially when the announcers came on, kind of changed up the settings. Clearly changed up the settings, and it just made it, I don't know, like you're watching a rebroadcast of something rather than watching a live event. But you were in the stadium, so what was it like in the stadium?
Yeah, so that was my first time visiting the Snapdragon with Wave playing. I've been there for a US game and, of course, the Loyal match. But my first experience with Wave, and I got to say, I did join the Sirens. I am now a paid member of, gosh, I don't know how many supporter groups at this point, but um, they're very cool and very friendly and very welcoming. We had a lot of fun at the tailgate. They had a very good troll working. They won their community shield as having the best record in the league, and the trophy apparently was a very rinky-dink, like budget plate that you can buy, a shield that you can buy on Max's bowlingtrophies.com. And so they're handing out pie plates wrapped in foil to celebrate the trophy NWSL gave the team, which I thought was very clever and very good. The atmosphere inside the match was not quite what I was expecting from a soccer match. Being in the supporter section, I think we may be kind of used to a certain level of energy and participation by other people in the supporter section. That is not what happens in the Cove at Wave matches. I did, pick up sticks and played a drum for a little while, which was fun. But there's not, they don't have a lot of songs to sing. I think there's a couple songs. Otherwise, it's like, you know, let's go Padres, like that chant, you know, if you could call it a chant, um, which, you know, I think has its place and definitely um, can be part of a match, but um, in heavy rotation, I think it loses its luster a little bit. And yeah, so I was there with Steve and with Nick Duffy, and Nick being the capo that he is. He tried. He stood up on the seats and got above everybody and was kind of leaning on me, and he's like yelling at everybody behind us, trying to get them to stand up and chant. And it just wasn't happening. Not the vibe, not the way they support that team. And I think you could hear it on the broadcast and maybe see it in the performance on the field. I don't know, the support that Wave gets from that crowd is like a tenth of what Loyal got in Torero from our crowd. uh, I don't know if that's a knock on the type of fans that Wave is drawing, but they're quiet. They're quiet, and it's disappointing because they had 36,000 people in there. You got to figure it can get loud. Petco gets loud with that many people in Petco, and it did get loud when the Padres were in the playoffs and beating the Dodgers. But the Wave fans couldn't muster the energy to support their club. So that's really disappointing, in my opinion. I know a lot of people didn't want people to talk negatively about the experience in the stadium, but hey, hey, it's soccer. Like you support your team, and if they're not going to support their team with everything they got, then I mean, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're not. They're not. Their fans are not supporting their team with everything they got, and that's fine. Don't support your team. I don't care. I won't either.
Well, I'll offer up a slightly different take because I think if you go to any supporter group anywhere in different groups, everybody has their own flavor, certainly there. And I will not be one to tell, I guess, any supporter group how they should support. That's me. Um, and I certainly enjoy the energy and the loudness and stuff we had in 109. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been part of the locals in the first place and trying to help foster that type of community. But I think it's also important to have space for a variety of different groups and different people to do it the way they choose to do it. And I also think I don't want to claim this as anything original because I know there were a lot of discussions on Discord and I've seen a lot of people say things around this idea, but I don't think, while there's some crossover, I don't think there's a ton of crossover between both the diehard fans or the um, average fans that show up to a Sirens match versus a Loyal match.
Well,
Sorry,
I'm
to
not knocking
a
the
Wave match.
Sirens. I'm talking the rest of the
Right.
fans. I mean, there are
As a,
people in the Sirens and in that supporter group. They're trying.
yeah.
They're trying.
No,
They're just not getting a lot of cooperation from the people around them and around the stadium.
and I think in looking at some of the crowd shots, I mentioned to my wife a couple of times, I said, I look at crowd shots and I hope nobody takes this as a knock on baseball specifically, but it looks like people were at a Padre game because in baseball there's a different attitude that you have. It's more casual. There's a lot of starts and stops between batters. It's the action's not constantly going like it is in soccer. And I think, frankly, and this is my lens, I think we were incredibly lucky. The type of, I will call them casual fans, just for people who were outside of our supporter section, but the types of fans we got at Torero for the Loyal matches were heavily invested. I mean, look at all the people who had gear and scarves and everything else and would react like maybe you and I typically think a crowd reacts during a soccer match as the action's going. But if anything, if the Wave are attracting people to come out to their match that aren't historically soccer fans, if you look at it the other way, there's a chance to grow that audience even bigger if they're pulling those people in who normally don't go. So I hope in the long run there's all that comes together and we just have a wider soccer base, a wider fandom in San Diego to come to these games.
Yeah, and it's I think that I don't want to let San Diego soccer fans off the hook too easily because we have the U.S. men's and U.S. women's team come through. They've come through. They've played at Snapdragon, so I feel like soccer fans here know how to support a team on the field. I just don't know why. Excuse me. With this team, it's not happening, and I wasn't the only one to note this. Jay Posner, who writes for the Union Tribune, I know there's not a lot of fans maybe in our audience of the way the UT covers soccer, but I think he kind of talked about this a little bit in a column he wrote about just that after they lost, this was the conference finals, that the fans weren't sad. He said, yeah, people just kind of went along like it wasn't like they weren't invested, and his kind of theory is just that because it's only their second season, that maybe the fans aren't as invested um, in as fans as maybe they would be if the team had been here longer and was more established. I, I don't know. I don't have the answer for it because I mean they're incredible players on this team, and yeah, it was a frustrating game. Things didn't go our way, but man, they can really fucking play, and like, I would love to have that. You know, they deserve to have that. You know, that crowd
The level of
behind them.
support, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it'll change over time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of it has to.
Right. Well, to get back to the Loyal quickly, we do have, if you haven't seen it in Discord, I'm going to pull it up on the screen, but there were these prints, and I can't remember now where this originated. I'm drawing a blank, but kind of it is the Loyal crest with some other San Diego iconic features, the Coronado Bridge and stuff from Balboa Park. But some people had asked about these because they were on the rally towel or something, weren't they? Also, I don't remember, but um, about getting this print, and there was some talk about Discord, what backgrounds. They ended up with the Tory Green, and it's been in Discord for about a week taking pre-orders. And I know if you go to the Merch Mansion channel in Discord, there are some links, but they're about to close the pre-orders. So if you want one of these prints, and I think they're running like $35 somewhere in there. But if you want one of these prints, go in there. The information is set up. The artist is going to make a few more than the pre-orders, but if you want to guarantee that you get one of these, make sure you put the pre-order in, because I don't know when they're closing, but I saw something posted today that they're going to be closing soon. So get in Discord and get on the Merch Mansion channel so you can get that information. Did you pick up one of these at all, Andrew?
I have not. I was kind of going back and forth over it because like I don't know how much more money I want to spend on loyal merchandise. Like I feel crappy saying that. It's only been 2 weeks. Like I don't know how long I'm supposed to wear my black veil, but it's just like I mean, and it is a great looking print, and I might end up getting one. But I'm just like, well, like how long do I keep these scarves and this flag up? Like how long before it just looks sad to have them? I don't know. I don't know. I'm yeah. I mean, looking at their stuff on OfferUp, like it really makes me sad to see somebody's desk. That was somebody's job that doesn't exist anymore. It's just you know, it's really tough. It's really tough to you know to go back to that. You know, just a few weeks ago to where we are now. I don't know.
Well, I ordered one, and I am going to be proudly displaying it here in my studio. So I will have it up, and I already have a frame picked out. So I can't wait for those to come in. And
You always have a healthier way of dealing with things than me, John. So I gotta. This is no surprise.
Speaking of, I guess, bringing things in here, we do have a guest who has just joined us, so probably a good time maybe to bring him in here as we get ready to talk about the survey. So let me get this graphic off, and we'll bring on Dylan Wilson. Dylan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I think I came in at a good time. Y'all were just talking about that print, and I actually did order one last week, I think. So that should be hopefully coming soon. So looking forward to that.
Dylan, I hate to do this to you, but I believe your microphone might be your laptop or computer mic versus your actual mic.
Uh-oh. Oh, you're correct. Okay, how does that sound?
Oh, man.
That's much better.
Like butter.
You would think that would happen automatically, and yet here we are in 2023, and I still have to do that manually.
You know me, man. I that is the first thing that I notice when a guest comes on is.
Oh no, 100%. No, my bad for not checking that first. I just assumed that the technology had my back.
Okay, John. So we've got Dylan. We've got survey results. We have pie charts. We have bar graphs. Let's get into it.
All right. So let me, before we start talking about anything in particular, just one, a thank you again to everybody who took the survey. We had more than 100 people take the survey. Two, thank you for your patience, because yes, it was very long, lots of questions in there. And this was, as it says on everywhere, and as we've been talking, our second member survey. The first one was all open-ended questions, and we used that to craft this second survey. So all those statements were things that people said through their responses in the first survey. So the first survey was just trying to help everybody wrap their brain around where we are with the oil finishing up and what we might do in the future as a supporter group. And we had people make all kinds of comments, and there were certain themes that came through there. And we tried to take those themes and craft them into statements where people could agree, disagree, or be somewhere in between. Because really what we wanted to see is, okay, yeah, a bunch of people said things. How many other people maybe feel that way? And how strong are those feelings? Or how open are people maybe to exploring some of these ideas? And I think if you go look at the surveys, we have some pretty clear indications of some things, and we probably need to dig a little deeper still on some other things to see where we.
You're not saying we're going to do another survey, John. Tell me there's not another survey coming.
But this was the big one. The third one will not be anything like this last one. But I would like to ask either of you, because you guys both took the survey. I know Andrew did. Dylan, did you take the survey?
I took the first round. I actually did not get a chance to do the second round, though.
Have you had a chance to see the results still?
I did, yes. I did look over them today.
Okay, so what I'm more curious about, is there anything, and Dylan, I'll start with you. Is there anything that stood out to you? Surprised you? Confirmed things? What kind of things possibly stood out to you?
Yeah, maybe confirmed things. I was heartened by the seeming unity on the idea of maintaining some sort of homage to San Diego Loyal in the color scheme of the locals going forward, kind of regardless of what happens. I think there were two kind of separate questions about this. Like, one of them was phrased as the locals should rebrand their colors to whatever the new team is. And I think there was a majority that said no to that, which I would agree with. And then there was another question about should Tory green remain one of the colors, and there was an overwhelming majority that said yes to that, which I would again agree with. So yeah, I was pretty heartened by that, and I think there was a question about keeping Bum on as a mascot, and again, it was overwhelming yes. So I appreciated that, because I think that regardless of what it is we decide to do going forward, and if I'm totally honest with you, my my own stance on that is still something I'm coming to terms with. I'm not really sure where I fall. But I think that keeping the locals identity that we've built is really important, because I think we are, we're a significant name and force here in San Diego soccer. Though our numbers are not the biggest, we're some of the most passionate soccer fans here in town. And so I appreciate that people within the group seem committed to the idea of maintaining this identity that we've forged. And, I understand that the colors, and maybe to an extent the identity as a whole, kind of were tied to the loyal identity. But I think at large, the identity of the locals kind of stands on its own. And so I appreciated seeing the support for that idea.
Yeah, I would like, as just thank you for that as well, but I'd like to make a comment because some people have mentioned to me that there were some overlapping questions or some questions seemed to contradict each other, and that was intentional because there were some ideas that people felt strongly about that we did that if we approached the question from more than one way, would that change how people responded? So those were some things we wanted to dig at in the survey to kind of see, again, where does our membership fall in general? And also for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, we'll do a very quick overview of the survey in a second. But the final tab on the spreadsheet are everybody's comments. And I think there were only about 3 total comments of people who didn't want theirs shared publicly, even if it was anonymous. But pretty much everybody else who wrote anything in the comments agreed to have them shared. And if you get a chance to read those comments, you can see then individual thoughts and see how those individual thoughts kind of fall in line, or maybe sometimes are outliers to the overall group thoughts, which is what you see with the different charts. And for what everybody has right now, they're just simple pie charts for the most part, just to see how people responded. Didn't take the time. Well, actually, I have a little bit, and I'll make some comments about that later, but to dig a little deeper and do some filtering to look at some of the answers, maybe about how some subgroups kind of decided or where they were leaning. And Andrew, how about you? Was there anything that stood out to you?
I think one thing that is very clear from these results is we don't have a lot of disagreement among the membership. The items that are split are, I think, kind of small things. I think the biggest split that I'm seeing is whether a supporter group can support more than one team, which it can't. That other half is wrong. I will I will lean on that. But I think that's the one that there's like a split where I can see that being not that it would even be contentious, but by and large, I think it's clear where members want to go and how members want to do it. And the only thing that people disagree on is, kind of the small details about it. Now, there are hardliners who don't want to support another team or don't want to support a particular other team, but that's definitely the minority by a long shot.
Well, I will say I'll give because I've spent a lot of time with these data. So here's kind of what I have seen as a big picture. The first section, and we had talked about this a bit as leadership, was that do we disband, rebrand, just kind of lumped all that together as the locals? Because really, that was the first thing we need to look at, because if there isn't any momentum really to keep this going, then that changes things. That changes all the other questions. And I think it's very clear from what's out there that there is a strong will to keep the group together in some way moving forward. I think that was clear from the results that we had. The second is there does seem to be, and actually more than I thought maybe not eventually as I thought, but maybe more than I thought at this point, so close to the end of the Loyal season, that I think there's both a strong group who wants to move towards the SDFC team, and quite a few people, I guess more than I expected, because there was always going to be a group, but more people that are open to it than I thought. So I was surprised to see that. But if we look at deal breakers, that is the single biggest deal breaker for people also. There are people who flat out won't go if that's the decision that the group goes. So there were all kinds of little deal breakers for people, but that was clearly the biggest.
You know, if
So
you're
that's
if you're married and your wife dies, and then a week later somebody's like, "Hey, I want to set you up with my friend," like you're probably going to be like, you know, "Hey, man, like chill out." You know, she just. But I mean, you know, after a certain amount of time, you know, it becomes easier, I think, to move on. Not that the Loyal is anybody's spouse, or that Loyal going out of business equates to a loved one dying. I do love these very apt comparisons, but um, I think that you have a kind of a dynamic here. If we did the survey in 1 year, I think those lines would be a lot squishier the closer we get to that team actually taking the field.
well, that kind of gets into my third point of kind of a bigger thing is there is a very strong sense of supporting San Diego, which is very clear in the survey, that people are willing to do that. Now, how that works for each person is where it gets a little cloudy. To some people in the survey, supporting San Diego means support every team, right? For some people, it's like, well, okay, if there's a new SDFC team, it means support them. But there were quite, you know, like a strong sense of support San Diego, but what that actually looks like, and that's probably something we need to dig into a little more, is broad. And really, I guess what I was surprised when I looked at is how open a lot of people are to various ideas. I thought there would be more deal breakers for people. No, it's only this, or I won't support, or it's only this, or I won't support. There are a lot of people who might not be their first choice, but they might be open to it depending how everything else falls into place. And then that kind of gets to the very last one, which was this. And I'm going to bring up the survey here right now just to get to this last screen. So when you get to the link, the survey, there's all these tabs here at the bottom, and I'm going to scroll across the tabs to get to the second to last one, this support a group as a community. This is where we had the most consistent results when we asked questions about, like, what in terms of being a community and our membership, what is it like to be part of a supporter group? And I'm not going to go through every question, but you just kind of glance. The green colors are people who agree with the statement, and red is disagree, and yellow is in between. But almost all of these were phrased in a positive way, like we want our supporter group to be welcoming. We should represent our community. I mean, these are the results that were the strongest, right? And if we're going to support a team, hold the club accountable, you know, be involved in the community, just if you go back and look through these things, support a group as a family, these are where we had the strongest results, where in some cases we had nobody who disagreed with those statements. Where it wasn't the case, we have other things that's kind of split. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. A third agree, a third disagree, and a third are in between. So that's, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing is people would like to see this group move forward. They feel a strong sense of community with the group. And the challenge for us and for leadership, for everybody in here is, okay, then in order to kind of keep most people together, what does that look like, right? And that's where I think we need to get some final things together in this last survey to hopefully nail down a few more things. And then hopefully, as we've been saying, maybe early December, we can have some kind of concrete plan, you know, that we can look at and say, like, thumbs up or thumbs down on. or something along those lines. Now, there may be, due to the way our bylaws are structured, ultimately, it really does have to be a leadership decision. Because ultimately, they're the ones who would vote to make any of those changes. So, like, do we do a final full group thing? There's some things that are still in the air. We'll have a Congress meeting next week, but these are things we're going to talk about. And if you hadn't had a chance, the link is in Discord. Go up there and take a look at it. And the very last tab here are the comments. And in that first section, I'm just going to scroll down to the end here, but we had 100 and not quite 100 and I think 106 people responded to the survey, and we had more than 60 comments here. 67 people who actually left some kind of comments on there, which
I want to say
more than I expected.
Because I know that this was kind of a big part of the survey, and you touched on it too. I will say that right now, the locals already do support local soccer. If you go to the Soccers, you go to the Wave, you will see members of the locals supporting those teams. I think the question is, like, as a group, as an organization, an organized supporter group versus, like, yes, I also go to Wave matches, right? Like, I guarantee you that none of the people who said yes, we should support every club are people that are in leadership or that put together videos or podcasts or like spend a lot of time with like the functioning of the supporter group, because it's very easy to just go to games, but like to be a supporter group for a club is so much work. Ask Steve and Lydia how much work they've put into this group over the last 5 years. It's just not, I think, a it sounds good, I think, but in practice, we do that, right? Already, naturally, as soccer fans, I think everybody's gone to soccer and Wave at this point. So I think that is something that folks should sit with a little bit, as these results are pretty split on that aspect. I mean, I like to be a little crass and say, yeah, that's the wrong half of the opinions, but there's a reason that I think that, and that's just because, like, the nuts and bolts of actually managing a supporter group of this size, which is, I think 300, maybe more paid memberships. But if this group does pivot to an MLS supporter group, I would multiply that number by 10 and expect a locals membership role in the 3,000s, 2,000s, and all of that work that it takes to manage a group of 300 people. Multiply that by 10 whenever there is thousands of members demanding people's time, having ideas, wanting to have a say in things. It's going to be more work. And if I would encourage people who want to see that to get involved and volunteer for leadership, because we're going to need a lot of help when that time comes. So be thinking about that with this last survey.
I wanted to say, kind of on the point you just made there, Andrew. I think that this idea of being a San Diego at-large supporters group is really appealing to a lot of people, because it kind of feels like I don't know, what's the best way to say this? Like kind of a median ground where people don't have to like pick a side. But I think the truth is, while that is an option that I think is worth exploring, it would require a pretty serious reimagining of what a supporters group looks like, just in terms of how they support a club on their game day experience. Because if we're, being polled between multiple clubs, that is invariably going to change what the match day experience and process looks like. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think you're right in that people need to take a little bit more serious of a consideration of what that might look like. I don't think it would be as straightforward as just being a loyal supporters group was. But yeah, I had the either privilege or disservice, depending how you look at it, of getting involved in leadership kind of right as all this unfortunate news was unfolding. And so I can only speak for myself, but I'm still very kind of undecided where I fall on all of this, and I am really curious to see what the membership says. And I know John kind of pointed to the fact that in our bylaws it will ultimately be a leadership decision, but I can only speak for myself, but I am really probably going to go with whatever the majority of our membership decides they want, because at the end of the day, like, this for me is all about the community. And so I want to go with what the community deems best. I'm sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to say that I kind of agree with you, Andrew, that I think the San Diego at-large supporters group proposition definitely would require more thinking than I think people realize.
Yeah. Thanks, Dylan, and thanks, John. We are pressed for time. We do have guest
Sorry.
coming in for the lounge, so I hope everybody sticks around for our conversation with James Stout. He will be live on the stream with us very shortly when we get back. So I hope everybody comes back.
All right, and you caught me off guard with the closing music again. Give me 1 second. All right, now we're ready to go.
Okay,
right,
this time for real. We'll see y'all. Thank you.